Now anything goes. And everything grows. And this is where the fun really began.
I wonder if this makes everything grow.
Hey, will you cut it out and leave it alone, huh?
Freddie boy, if I want to try some of this stuff, just don't you try and stop me, understand?
And try it they did.
Welcome back, my fellow agents. It is I, X7, your host of Xenorama, the podcast of heroes and monsters, and your agent of awesome. Today we are talking about Village of the Giants from 1965. It was aired on Svengoolie last night, and apparently a lot of viewers didn't really care for the movie or thought it was bad. This is the second time I've ever watched it, so I thought it was a hoot. Way better than it had any right to be. But before we get into that, please do all the stuff. Like, share, subscribe. Leave me a comment. What do you think about this movie? Did you like it? The people that are in it is astounding. And for B.I.G Gordon, I think this is one of his best. But if you're ready, let's get on with the show. So we got this, I got this from the Internet Archive, so the copy's not as great as it could be, and I think it's pan and scan, or at least cropped. That's what we'll have to do. I didn't realize I was going to enjoy it so much, or I might have looked around. I know there's a DVD out. It kind of falls into the teen beach movies. It's a teen exploitation from Joseph E. Levine, the man who brought us both Godzilla and Hercules, 2 years apart. But and B.I.G Gordon, of course, who we know as Mr. Big himself. We've reviewed several of his movies already. They are always enjoyable to a degree. And this one, I really think it's one of his best. If he hadn't made a magic sword, this probably would be, but I think that's a better movie. And of course, the first Colossal Man is quite good. So here's some of our stars. Toni Basil, yes, she of Mickey fame, is a top-notch choreographer, but she's in this with her. And look at little Ronnie Howard as Genius, and the Beau Brummels, Freddie Boom Boom Cannon, who's of course we know now as who did the Svengoolie Stomp, and Mike Clifford warbles some obligatory love song. Who cares? There's the songs. Little Bitty Corinne is what Freddie sings, and I don't know who wrote the ones for the Beau Brummels, but they're quite good. I mean, really. Produced and directed by B.I.G Gordon. And there we start out with a car wreck, and these juvenile delinquents come out. They're playing in the rain. There's a strong suspicion that they are a bit under the influence of some illicit substances, but it's never quite shown. But it's kind of implied because they're out there partying in the rain. They decide to go to Haynesville, California. And now we see Tommy Kirk kissing his girlfriend. Tommy Kirk is, let me scroll down here, Mike. I believe his girlfriend there is, I don't know if it's Jean or Nancy off the top of my head, but there he's kissing it. I have met Tommy Kirk. He was very pleasant and nice. And let's see, Nancy. That's Nancy. And then her younger brother is Genius. So Nancy is Charla Doherty. And they're kissing. That dog there is Higgins, who would later be known about 8 years later as Benji. And he's a character. I can see why Benji was a hit, and I did see the movie. There he is, Genius, little Opie Cunningham himself. Opie Cunningham. What do bucko mean? If you know Saturday Night Live from, say, 81, you'll know what I'm talking about. But he's got some sort of thing. He's ruining their fun, and he causes an explosion. And then he invents this stuff, which is later known as goo. The goo is essentially angel food cake colored pink. So, they're talking about it. And Orangey there, who's in his own movie he was in many movies. I don't know if we've seen him, but one of his first movies was Rhubarb. He was in This Island Earth, Incredible Shrinking Man, as the cat who tried to eat The Incredible Shrinking Man, Visit to a Small Planet as Clementine, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Comedy of Terrors, and this is his final role as Giant Cat. So he eats the goo, and this is how they find out it turns things big. Poor old Wolf, as Higgins is known here, is scared and runs away. And he's like, we can make money. We can feed it to livestock. And instead of thinking, I mean, they can't make vegetables grow with it because maybe they could have tried, but which would have been smarter because those are replenishable. Giant livestock has to eat a lot more food. And so they feed it to some ducks while Wolf watches, and then they're big. Like, okay, we got to keep this a secret because we don't want people get horning in on our action. Of course, Wolf eats it, and he's giant. Which a genius there. Opie is not fazed by anything. Meanwhile, our juvenile delinquents have taken over a theater stage. Obviously, they're sword fighting and wearing things. Let's see, that right there is Joy Harmon as Mary, the blonde there. Gifted young lady. Here's our villain of the piece. Not really, but just, that is Beau Bridges himself. Very earnest and erstwhile. And he's like, what are we going to do here? Let's go find something to do. So they head out. All the kids are swinging with the Beau Brummels. And there's Toni Basil herself as Red. Quite sure that's a wig she's got on, but they're the Beau Brummels looking very dapper. And so the geese are dancing along with them, which they're just being shaken a bit. So our juvenile delinquents want to know how these geese got so big and what they can do about it so they can make some money. Meanwhile, Genius is trying to recreate the goo with his giant dog, but he keeps blowing things up in his face. Fortunately, it's non-toxic. Meanwhile, Red there introduces more people. Mike, no, that's not Mike, that's Fred, tries to romance Nancy while the other girls try to romance Mike. They're kind of barking up the wrong tree there, because if you know. So there they kill the geese and roast them, pluck them, and they're feeding everybody. It's like, we're going to make so much money. Freddie Boom Boom Cannon there sings his song. There's no soundtrack of the official soundtrack, though if you want to find the songs, you can find the songs. Let's see. I forget. Yeah. So he sings, everyone's bouncing along. Genius thinks he's got goo, and it disappears. Meanwhile, a spider gets into the goo, because they always do, a tarantula, which is not it could be in California, sure. But it screeches like every tarantula does in the movies. And fortunately, Mike's a genius, and he electrocutes it, and almost electrocutes himself. Our delinquents break in looking for the goo, and then they find it, but one of them steps on the burglar alarm, which sends off a rocket. The burglar alarm, so everyone runs over. Mike and Fred there have a small, frank exchange of ideas, but they do the pile-on because everyone gets involved, and one of the JDs runs away. And nobody's bruised up, but here they are, Mike and Cowboy. I think that's Cowboy. Maybe Rick. I don't know which one he is, because he's steady with Red, and they're all trying to figure out where it is, but they're trying to figure out, the JDs are trying to figure out what they're going to do with it. Well, let's eat some. I'm going to eat it. So they managed to slice that thing into 7 or 6 equal parts, because there's 3 boys and 3 girls, and she doesn't. This little blonde doesn't want to eat it, but she gets coerced into it. So they all do, and then they start growing and losing their clothes. So, you get some pseudo-nudity, just enough to titillate whatever teenage audience is watching this in the drive-in, because I'm sure they weren't doing anything else anywhere else. So we get for Bert I. Gordon, these effects are top-notch. You don't see through the people, and so the embiggening does really well. Genius still working on it, and now it's time for station identification. You are watching Zenorama, the podcast of heroes and monsters on KXNO, part of the Zenorama Broadcasting Network. We now return you to our regularly scheduled program. The gang is now fully embiggened at about 30 feet tall, and there's 6 of them, so that's a fair amount of. This is over 30 feet, 9.1 meters tall. They've taken all the available clothing or available cloth to turn into their clothing. So they all look kind of like refugees from Star Trek before Star Trek was around. And, all the kids are like, what? The cops show, and then they start dancing. Mike's had enough, so he cracks him across the shins with that's a pretty good model of a human leg, very furry, and gets swatted aside for his boldness. The cops show up and are like, what's all this? The movie itself was released October 20th, 1965, so it's a shade younger than Your Humble Agent. It runs a whopping 81 minutes, and it's not wasted. Everything is perfect. I mean, say what you will, but Burt kept his movies rolling. They didn't have a lot of extraneous nonsense in there. So the cops are there, and they're like, all right, we'll leave. We'll give. The GADs have decided to take over the town because they're bigger than everybody. And they go to the theater. And see, look at this. Beautiful match shots there. They're like, give us your guns, or we've got your kid. So, I mean, Fred has a little trepidation about using the kid, but you know what? When you have great power, aside from great responsibility, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I guess great power corrupts greatly, unless you have responsibility. So the sheriff throws his guns down. He gives them a list of his demands. All the old people have to be in bed by like 9 o'clock. Shades of The Simpsons, and although Simpsons they did it first here. Genius still working on it, and he's made this thing that moves, and everyone's watching. That is stop motion animation as it goes down the drain, which I watched 3 times to see if it was, and you know it. If you know how stop motion looks, that's what it is. So this young lady is watching everyone give up their arms, and this guy's reading. That is a Famous Monsters. I think it's cropped apart. See how it's there, but that is a Famous Monsters cover. Kong, with of course Bert is showing himself off with War of the Colossal Beast. What a self promoter! They bring him some barely disguised KFC, and they're like, and look at all the soda bottles they have there. And I'm like, that's not going to feed them long. That's not going to last long. They're going to be hungry. They're going to run out of food. It would not surprise me if Bert really had wanted to turn this into a horror movie. And I'm not going to do it, but they could have him turn cannibal and start wanting to eat the kids and the grown-ups. So they're still trying to figure out what to do, and they decide to have a rodeo. So they lure old Fred out, and they start roping him. Now, I'm not going to say Ray Harryhausen saw this because I'm sure he was in England at the time doing the most phenomenal 1 million years BC, but it kind of reminds you a little bit of them roping Guanji here, where she runs around. And look at this. This little surfer hot rod was designed by, what's his name? Big Daddy Roth. It's the Surfite, maybe. So that's actually a tiny custom hot rod designed by Big Daddy himself. Unfortunately, they get away because they've got Mike's girlfriend there, Nancy. See, this guy's more of a juvenile delinquent than Fred. So they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. They're coming up with plans. They need him to. Oh, they want to knock him out so they can rescue the girl and the 2 girls. Red's going to distract him. And yeah, if you think I was going to be able to resist a Mickey line, well, or what's the one that Fancy did? The original version isn't Mickey, it's something else. Or Ricky, if you're a Weird Al fan. There they are, bringing them tiny little soda bottles and tiny little pieces of chicken. Why didn't they feed them some ducks, and they could have duck dinners? Next, I'll happy. You bring the ducks. Oh yes, a J. Wellington Wimpy quote. So he's trying to tell him to lighten up. Nothing's gonna hurt you. But now Mike's gonna play David to Fred's Goliath, and he's got the spear, but he really needles him because these guys are if you're smaller, you're way faster. and everyone's just watching. They're just standing around. Now I think that's Fatso because they were so very very lovely to name themselves that, and they little girl almost gives them away. She's reading an actual teen magazine down there. Fred's still trying to get Mike, but this big old cotton ball is full of ether. So out she goes, and they rescue the girls. Meanwhile, Genius accidentally, instead of making more goo, creates a cure, and Wolf has shrunk down. I hope he shrunk down orangey, because having a giant cat that size is not going to be pleasant for anyone. Mike's about to get pulverized. See? And suddenly, Genius shows up on his bike with a banana seat and smoking them out, and they all shrink down. And Mike just cold cocks Fred, deservedly so. Comeuppance. He gets his comeuppance, which is always a good thing. This movie is funny, and it's just got a good heart to it. Could it be better? Sure, probably. But for what it is, it's a teenage fair, a drive-in teenage fair. I thought it was very enjoyable, and I kind of wish I'd had a better copy of it. The cops run them out of town. They all leave with their now, oversized clothes. They get back to their old car when suddenly a group of small people want to know about the goo, which no longer exists because they're not going to make it again. But that's how it ends. The end. It's the living end, if you will. And if you're leaving, you do know what to do. But I really did enjoy this movie.
There's a prehistoric monster who came from outer space, created by the Martians to destroy the human race. The FBI is helpless, it's 20 stories tall. What can we do, who can we call? Call Tomo.
Yes, it's a very, very silly movie, but it's just enjoyable for what it is. If you don't go in expecting much, won't be disappointed. So tomorrow, we will be reviewing episodes 9 through 12 of Symbionic Titan, which puts us right in the middle of the series. And again, it's very enjoyable. So until that next assignment, my fellow agents, this is X7 signing off and phasing out. And remember, we are available on Patreon where you can still see it for free. And there is extra content here on there these days. But until that next assignment, this is X7 signing off and phasing out. And I've said this twice now. Be seeing you.
Symbiotic defense mode initiated. Octus unit magnified.
What's happening?